Okay, so what on earth is going on? This broadcast is all about discerning what would be the best case scenario. Most of us are really good at the worst case scenario, but we're very bad at the best case scenario. We're dealing with a trade war, which could be pretty bad. We're dealing with Israel being attacked, today Iran, and I believe something from Lebanon, which was also controlled by Iran. We're dealing with, um, let's focus on these two issues today. So let's focus on what, imagine if I was president, I would do. So first and foremost, I need to be honest, I don't understand the whole Chinese situation. However, there's a very fundamental principle which both the China and the US, and in fact all countries, have to take. And number one, we have to understand that while Trump is a tough negotiator, and he has successfully negotiated with Mexico as well as Canada, fundamentally speaking, the world is better off in an environment of peace and love. Now, there will always be people that will take advantage of you. And I think that Trump has a weakness that he doesn't like to be taken advantage of. And while that may be to some extent a natural reaction when you go through life, and part of his strength is his toughness, it's also not a wise reaction. And the reason it's not wise is because fundamentally speaking, what the world needs is a sense of safety. I think it's fair to say that to take, say, $100 billion hit in a trade deficit is much more worth it than to have a time of instability. Now, ultimately, the solution to global problems lies in a single mechanism, and that is a mediation. And certainly, I believe that if I were president, I would do everything in my power to incentivize mediation. Mediation is a very important tool. All the courts are heading towards mediation because whenever you have a war, you always have a winner and a loser. And no one wants to be the loser. And even if you win, the environment's not such a good environment. The businesses, I have a cousin in China, so the environment in China for American businesses is not pleasant. For business to work, people have to like each other. They have to respect each other. They have to trust each other. And so therefore, if I was president, I believe that sometimes it's better to take a hit and to encourage mediation, which is mutual, voluntary. So nobody's going to lose. It's a voluntary thing. And whether you did this with Russia over what's going on in Crimea, whether you did it with Russia over what's going on in Iran, let's not forget that Russia's providing Iran, which is ridiculous because Iran sees them as Christians, and when Iran wants to blow up the world, Russia's part of it. But that's a very important way to deal with reality. And that's just one facet. And the next facet is that it's just absolutely disgusting to see. I was watching a Times interview of Netanyahu. I mean, the typical, let's call it liberal, I don't like to label, but I'll use that term, liberal journalist is literally out of their mind. They have no connection to reality. They're coming in with this premise. They say that if the Jews put down their weapons, there'd be no more Jews, God forbid. But if the Arabs put down their weapons, there'd be no more wars. And they're judging Netanyahu, a person who's brought stability, peace, and prosperity, as if there's some kind of moral authority. Meanwhile, the real losers are not the Palestinians in Israel, which have untold fortunes. The real losers are Palestinians in Lebanon, all over the world. They're getting massacred in Syria. They don't have rights. But you see, the liberals don't actually. Let me rephrase that. I don't want to be negative. The mistake of the liberal thinking is that the liberal thinking is not their own thinking. They're really influenced through disinformation, and they believe a story. Now, basically, the essential psychological profile of the liberal mind is like a child. The child is not stupid. In fact, the child is very, very, very clever. However, the thing about the child is that the child needs safety. The child cannot operate. The child has no courage, has no resilience. So because safety is such a strong need, the child will agree with anyone as long as it makes him feel safe. And so the liberal will agree with anyone who will shame them. And so therefore, when you look at the objective facts, the people that are persecuting the Palestinians are the Arabs. I mean, hundreds of thousands of Arabs have been murdered in the Syrian civil war, but they don't care. Nobody cares about Arabs. They don't care about Palestinians. All they care about is the fear that someone will shame them. So they think that they're pro-Palestinian. They're not pro-Palestinian. They're simply like the Nazis. They're following Hitler's orders.